You'll see this even against the best big limit players, even on televised championship events. An opponent's wager doesn't hit the pot as smoothly as intended. It's fumbled. Maybe a few chips fall off and go astray. When that happens, the opponent may automatically and instantly act to straighten up the fumbled wager. Players do this because they're holding weak hands or are bluffing. They feel the fumble will make you suspicious and they want to correct the mistake immediately. So you won't call. But of course, you often should call when you see this. With many hands, you would have folded. Keep in mind that positional advantage can temporarily reverse in the blinds. You'll act after the player to your right on every hand except when you have the small blind. On this hand, you'll act first on the flop and beyond. But the disadvantage is only temporary. Next hand, you'll have positional advantage over your opponent again. If you're in doubt about which is the best seat, choose a seat so that the big money is on your right. You may have no idea why those stacks are so big. Maybe that's an aggressive winning player, or maybe it's a weak player who's been lucky. In either case, you want that money on your right, where you can use your positional advantage to take a shot at it.
Every once in a while, you'll be reasonably certain that your opponent has missed a hand or that your opponent doesn't hold much. If you check to that opponent and you don't have anything either, you're giving your opponent a chance to take the pot. And what you really want to do if you think you have a poor hand and your opponent has a poor hand is win the whole pot. You don't want to give your opponent a chance to take the pot, and you don't even want to have a showdown where it's 50-50 whether your garbage hand will beat his garbage hand. So what do? You bet. In these situations where you think you're both weak, you bet in order to get the whole pot instead of trying to see a showdown and winning half the pot on average. Now, not always will this be where you get a chance to check into your opponent first. Sometimes your opponent will check into you, and you're going to have to decide then, being the last person to act, what you want to do. Let's look at this hand, for instance. Let's say we're the big blind, and I got in free for this. I decided not to push it, with no reason to push it. Queen, deuce of clubs, that's not a pushable hand. The small blind just called. I said, okay, let's see the flop. And we saw this flop. This is the flop, and that's a pretty good hand for me. And my opponent checked. Now often I'm going to bet right here just because I have an overcard, a flush draw, and this player might throw it away right then. I'd say like 3 out of 4, maybe 4 out of 5 times I'm going to bet. But this is one of those times that I didn't. So there's still only the blinds in the pot. Here comes the turn. Well, that doesn't figure to help anybody. Check. Well, I could bluff at it now, or I could hope to get the club, hope to catch a queen, but I don't because there's nothing really worth fighting over here. Now here's the last card. Pairs threes, but everybody pairs threes, so opponent in the small blind check. And now what do I do? Well, it seems to me I'm about 50-50 here. This opponent may have a jack high, a 10 high, total garbage. He may have paired a pair of 5s or 6s, and he may call me. But I think reading this opponent now that it's more likely that he has garbage also. But it could very well be bigger garbage than mine. It could be queen with a bigger kicker. It could be a king. It could be an ace. I don't really know if I have the best hand here. I'd say if I had to really know whether I did or not, I would just flip a coin because I don't have a clue the way the hand comes down. Now that player check, what should I do? It's a garbage versus garbage situation. I should bet because if he has garbage, even a king high, it's very unlikely he's going to call now. I'm going to take the whole pot. if I just show it down 50-50, that means on average each of us gets half a pot. I want the whole pot, I bet.
Here's another hand that almost never fails, and no limit Holdem. You have to always consider your opponent. You got to get inside his head. So you need to know that the guy that you're pulling this on is a good player, and he's thinking along the same lines that you're thinking. And you also have to be behind him and let him act first. So he's raised it, and you've called it. Here comes the flop out here. Jack, Jack, and a tray. And he bets, which usually the guy that has raised the pot will lead and bet at the pot. So this guy leads off and bets at the pot. You don't raise him, you just call him. Now, actually, say here's his hand. He's got an ace-king. Perhaps he might even have a big pair here. It still usually works. And here's your hand. Well, you've got nothing. But when he bets and you call it, he immediately thinks, well, he's probably got a jack, and he's just waiting for me to come on. And regardless of what comes, if he checks it again, you bet at this pot. And even if he's got two aces or two kings there, he usually will call you there. But then when the last card comes, if you make a real big bet, almost invariably he'll fold. But again, you have to be aware of who you're playing against. It goes back to playing against people. If this guy is a good player, he's thinking along those same lines that I've just described. And this play will work 90% of the time, at least 90%.
And the secret there is just the call on the flop.
Oh yeah, you can't raise because he might get suspicious. If you do have a jack here and raise, it's a good play also, because then he is suspicious and he thinks, well, he's trying to pick this pot up off of me. But if you just call it, warning bells is going off in his head. You can just almost see him.
So what you're doing here is you're actually, with absolutely nothing basically, you're just setting up the bluff by using this round to establish the fact that you'll be able to bluff on the next round.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what these two cards are. This goes back to playing your people instead of your cards. This guy just can't help but think that I've probably got a jack here. There's no draw out there. I don't have a big pair, or I would have raised him. So he says, what has he got? He's got a jack, because I bet and he called me. This play will work. Just try it.
And these are some of the most sophisticated plays in Holdem, but you don't want to be trying these against suckers.
You don't try it against amateurs. These are sophisticated plays against good players.
Because if the players don't understand what it is that you're trying to convey, you're just wasting your time and wasting your money.
Exactly. You can't make a sophisticated play against an unsophisticated player. Always remember that.